Welcome to another edition of Spooky News from Spooky Ventures. This news update is for December 9th, 2022, and it is almost certain to be the final spooky news for the year. As you're probably aware, I'm all about putting the spooky back into Christmas, so I hope you are having a suitably spooky winter holiday season. Remember, spooky is a lifestyle, not a season, so every part of the year should be contain plenty of spooky. Besides, spooky stories at Christmas is a time-honored tradition that seemed lost by the wayside for a time. I'm happy to say that it appears to be coming back into fashion. Before we get to the actual news items, I want to talk about a few things. First, I want to remind everyone that you can find all kinds of Spooky Ventures merch at our Cafe Press store at cafepress.com/spookyventures. That includes a number of Put the Spooky Back into Christmas designs. Next, please remember that all of Spooky Ventures, but especially this YouTube channel, is meant to be interactive. So please, interact. You can do that by liking our videos, sharing them, and subscribing to our channel. You can also do that by commenting on our videos. Finally, I'd like to remind you to stick around after I'm done talking. That's because I include all the source URLs for the news items covered at the end of this video. Of course, you can also find those in the details section on the YouTube channel. Turning to the news, I should mention that doing these less frequently, in part because there are less spooky news items this time of year, means that some of these stories might be a few weeks old. I still feel they are worth talking about, though, and they were all published after I finished recording the previous edition of Spooky News. Our first piece of news is a sad one. It's also the oldest of them I have in this edition. If you remember the original Ghostbusters film, and who doesn't, you have seen the actress Kimberly Herron. She's in Dan Aykroyd's character's Ray Stance's dream sequence. At least it has always seemed like a dream sequence to me. She played the ghost who floated over him and then performed a sexual act on him. That character was actually supposed to serve as a love interest for Stance and have a bigger role in the film, but ultimately it was cut down to just that one scene. And the news broke mid-month that Herron had passed away late in October from breast cancer. She was 65 years old, and may she rest in peace. Next, we will turn to some book news. The first story under that heading centers on a new book focused on Shudder's Creepshow television series. Bearing the title Shudder's Creepshow From Script to Scream, the book comes from Titan Publishing. It was released on November 22nd and is a coffee table book designed to present a behind-the-scenes look at the series. It includes a foreword from Stephen King and an afterword from horror collector, enthusiast, and Metallica guitarist Kirk Hammett. That book comes in both a standard and exclusive edition with different cover art for the two versions. From there, we turn our attention to Archie Comics. For those who haven't been paying attention, while Archie in decades past was a lightweight, almost soap opera-ish endeavor, the modern version of the franchise often gets into very horror-based zones. Such is the case with an upcoming one-off title. It's going to be called Chilling Adventures Presents Betty, the Final Girl #1, and that title tells you what the basic idea is. Centered on longtime Archie character Betty Cooper, the issue is set to hit comic stores mid-February of next year. It's described as a cross between Scream and When a Stranger Calls. Now, while they say it's going to be a one-off, the very fact that it includes the #1 in the title tells me that they might change that at some point in the future and release more of them. From books, let's move on to television shows. First, we'll turn to Netflix and their new Wednesday series. It's just knocked a fan favorite off the list for best opening weekend. That's because its numbers have bypassed those for Stranger Things. Given the sustained popularity of Stranger Things, I would think that bodes well for more seasons of Wednesday. Next up, we move on to a story with ties to both Netflix and Amazon. Mike Flanagan has become a real master of television horror through his various series on Netflix. That will all be coming to an end after the upcoming Poe-based The Fall of the House of Usher series. That's because Flanagan will then move on to an exclusive deal with Amazon Prime for his next output. Given his track record, that should bode well for Amazon. From television, we'll move on to a story that has a focus on film, but still a television connection. For those who have been following news of the reboot of Blade that is being planned to tie into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, a piece of news should be particularly exciting. That news item is that Yann Demange, who brought the series Lovecraft Country to life, has signed on to direct the new Marvel film. Now we have one more piece of news for you this time. I'll start it with a couple questions. Did you see the recent movie Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey? If so, did you like it? Well, if you answered yes to both questions, you are likely to find this piece of news especially interesting. Rice Frake Waterfield, sorry about that, the director of that Winnie the Pooh film, is producing a new movie that similarly turns a beloved children's character into horror film fodder. This time around it's Bambi, and the deer we're all familiar with is going to be presented as a vicious killing machine. Given the trauma the woodland animal went through, I don't think that kind of transformation is all that far-fetched a reaction. I don't know about you, but I love these kinds of twists, so I'm actually really looking forward to seeing that movie. Well, that brings us to the end of the actual news. As I'm sure some of you know, it also means it's time to look at the Spooky Ventures calendar. You can always find our spooky calendar at the bottom of the main page at spookyventures.com. However, before I get to the dates actually on the calendar, I wanted to mention a couple of other interesting dates coming up. These aren't on the calendar. We have a couple of interesting videos going to be published in the next week. First, be sure to check in on Saturday. I'll have a brand new spooky feature which will find me chatting with Mike Korn. Mike publishes a website called Wormwood Chronicles, and he's also one of my best friends. In this video, which was done as a live feed on Tuesday, we talk about his articles in two Tales of Wonder and Dread books, Spooky Berwyn 2 and Spooky State Line, among many other things. There's a lot of paranormal talk, and you'll have fun with it. Then next Tuesday, we will have a brand new spooky interview. That interview features Sean Burkett, who is the filmmaker responsible for the movie Animal Inside that I reviewed on this channel a few months ago. He's also produced done Don't F in the Woods 1 and 2 and Stranded. We talk about his filmmaking and much more. Again, that video was a live interview that took place this past Monday. Turning to the actual calendar events, this time around there are only a few movie openings to mention. Now keep in mind that I get these dates from Fandango, and I'm not sure about details including how wide a release the films are getting. So you'll probably need to check on that stuff. First up is a holiday horror movie, you know I love those things, called Christmas Bloody Christmas, which opens today. A week from today there are two movies opening. Those are something called Lullaby and another one called The Pale Blue Eye. Well, that's all for this time. I should be back sometime in January for another spooky news segment. In the meantime, here's wishing you all a spooky holiday season. Finally, remember, as I always say, keep it spooky. Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.